Welcome to the Astoria Film Festival 2020 virtual step and repeat interviews. Today we are speaking with Jess Costa, who's the director of A Second Embrace and the writer, actress, and producer of A
Correct.
Second Embrace as well. So how are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Doing well. I mean, in need of a haircut, but other than that, good.
I just got mine yesterday.
My place is still not open yet. Yours looks good. It's short, like a military.
I know, I've been waiting so long.
Yeah.
Take it all.
Okay, so your project, A Second Embrace, was about an estranged relationship. So can you tell us, Nairobi, how you came up with that idea and what was the inspiration for that?
Sure. I was listening to a podcast of the same title. The name of the podcast is Modern Love. It's a New York Times essay that they now have a podcast and someone reads it. And it was this woman, basically what the podcast was about, this couple who had gotten a divorce because of a third party. And they were co-parenting, and one thing led to another and started dating each other again. And then at the time, I was babysitting a little boy, and I was doing his laundry, and I was folding his little jeans. And I started thinking about kids, and I started thinking about how, other than a widowing situation, how does a relationship end that's still in love? And that's kind of how I got the idea. Without telling you what happens, I don't know how would I describe it.
No, yeah, it was great. That's really cool. No, I watched it shortly before our interview because I wanted to be fresh in my mind before we spoke. And I just have to say, it is so wonderfully done. Everything about it. The dialogue is so fresh, and the directing is done excellently. How was it for you as like the director, and how did you guys collaborate? And I know it's hard as like a writer to let go of your script and give it in the hands of another person. So how was that relationship like? And did you guys know each other? How long, like prior to making it, did you guys know each other? And what's your relationship like?
Sure. Jess, you start this one.
Sounds good.
It's for visuals.
So this started, a short of mine entitled Dreamers about the DACA program was in a festival, Picture Productions, where Nairobi was the moderator. And so we met afterwards and we started talking. She's like, I have this script idea. I would love to send it if you're open. She sent it over to me, and I loved how much you could tell the rich history of these characters just in that instant moment. Their mannerisms, the way they talked, and you could just tell they had little short hands, which I loved. And so Nairobi and I went over the script beat by beat. And we're like, okay, what is this part? What does that really mean? What is your intention here? Because I don't really get it. And we kind of just got to a really good understanding of like what the heart of this story is, and just, what's the background and why this moment, why right now.
Right. So how
I have to add that Jess was very patient with me because I have never I've produced many times before, but I've never executive produced film. This is my first at bat as a screenwriter, as a screen actress, as a producer. So Jess knew going in that, and she knew going in my weaknesses in terms of vocabulary, roles, individual roles for the crew, because it's very different from the theater world. So if I would say something, Jess would be very clear, like that this falls under this person's jurisdiction, etc., which was an incredible learning curve for me, and I'm sure a little annoying a lot of the times for Jess, but it was the only way for me to learn, and I trusted Jess enough to trust me as well in I'm doing my best in learning as we go.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool, guys.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely know where you're coming from. It's probably was so much fun to shoot together, especially since you guys like come from I'm assuming a theater background, Nairobi.
100%.
And you seem like you have you're very hands-on in the film industry, Jess.
Yes.
So it must have been a lot of fun.
I've been doing it since I was 10 years old, so been really crawling through it.
So a question for both of you is, how have your life experiences affected your creative journeys for A Second Embrace, and how do they influence this work specifically?
Sure. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh. I'll start then. I a young creative journey. It was interesting that a strange couple coming together and really feeding into this background. For me, like I want to understand the script in vignettes so that we can build it up that way. So for me, it's like the way I process things in life. I'm like, okay, let's take it chunk by chunk. And I feel like that was our big approach in how to create this and how to almost separate the chapters of this world. And yeah, it was a lot of the heart and soul from Nairobi and me really just diving in with her about that. So I was really
Well,
lucky.
thank you for that. But for me, look, I'm not married. I've never been married. And for those who have seen the film, I don't have kids or anything of that nature. So what I had to draw on is I love children. But on top of that, I think I can say for most people, we've all been in a relationship that does end. And no matter how happy you are in your next relationship and how great it is, you can hear the other person's name once in a while, and a part of you has a moment of like, oh, and you somehow forget all the negatives. If it was a somewhat positive relationship, the positives would outweigh the negatives, right? And that is what I was able to bring into it. The rest is really imagination, and that is a wonderful tool. And how I would imagine if I failed in a marriage, how I hope to address it post, that it wouldn't be so nasty. I think people, and I say this in my cover letter when I've been submitting to festivals, is that people forget, I think, how much in love they were at one point in the relationship, because it gets so nasty. Divorces can be so nasty, and I'm a product of divorce. So that's what I brought to the table. Everything else was imagination. I knew the actor Luke younger. He's a very good friend of mine. So I know how he talks in real life. I'm around him all the time, and his wife and his kids. So I was able to just hear his voice. And that's to what Jess was talking about. It's just like, I just know how Luke talks, and I know how I talk. So the shorthand, I think, was because Luke and I know each other behind the scenes. It's long-winded, but that's kind of how I did it without having been married.
Yeah, I totally get that. And you did such an excellent job, because it came across so clearly to me. And it really moved me by the time I got to that last scene where they're walking down the crosswalk. He's like, oh, this is my, it'll be a double cigarette cheat day, which I love that line. But when you made this and you finish it and you watch the final product, what was that feeling like? And what do you want your audience to take away after finishing it? For both of you.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah. We'll go back and forth.
Yeah, I remember we did our own private screening after months of working on it. We had a month long without watching it. And that was the first time I could really watch it again and really watch it for what it was and feel the heart of it again. Because, as you're in post, you're doing the nitty gritty, you're cleaning this up, you're fixing that. So then it's that like deep pit moment, especially once you realize and understand what these characters have gone through. And because at first you're like, I'm along for this journey, I relate to them, I like them, this is how I'm going in. But then you get that pit in your stomach, like that scream moment in the flashback, and it just stabs right through you. And like that residue, and then coming back 3 years later, it's almost like you release your breath and they walk off together. And that's, I feel, really encapsulates the moment that I feel with the second embrace, that leaving off moment. It's like your breath is finally not held anymore, almost like they've been holding it for 3 years.
Sure. I concur. I have struggled very much watching it. And I haven't been able to truly enjoy it until recently, when in February, when we did the Galentine. It screened at the Galentine. And it was the first time that I've been able to see it and actually just see it for what it's worth, and the work. And it was the first time I saw it. I was like, oh, okay, it's pretty good. It's pretty solid for certainly for my first at bat, I'm all right. Okay, this is good. And I think it's because, and I said this to Jess, when you're in theater school, the first year of theater school, and you're learning technique and training, you go see a play and that's all you're seeing. And eventually you see a play 8 months later and you don't see the work. You just are immersed in it. And every time I kept seeing the film, that's what I was telling Jess, I kept thinking like, oh, this is that scene where when we were filming, this happened behind the scenes, or this is the scene that brought us nightmares in editing because it wasn't right. So I have had a really hard time divorcing myself from all of that. And in February, the Galentine's, it had been so long since I'd seen it that I didn't see any of that. I mean, I saw a couple things. I was like, but I think that's the way I work anyway. I think most artists will always have something like that. But now when I see it, I think I know what happens at the end after that double cigarette cheap line. But at that Galentine's event, there was a woman who asked me, who told me afterwards what happened. And her version is not what I think happened. But the way she articulated it, the way she was so clear, I was like, you know what, that's also not wrong. And now I love that. I love that there's a different interpretation, and I think it all depends on your life experience.
And I think
love that.
Yeah, I think it's because we don't say the specifics of why they broke up until later. It's almost like when you're reading a book. It's like you put in all the little bits of your own life in it and the way you imagine it until we're like, oh, this is our reveal. And they're like, okay, but I already brought all my baggage from the beginning in it. So now this is how I think it ends, which I love.
Yeah, no. It is beautiful. Like when you make art, like it's so cool that you have this idea of it in your head, like, oh, this is how I interpret it, and this is how I, as the artist, wrote it and meant for it to be interpreted. But when you get a different take on it, it's like kind of cool to see that like you impact an audience in a specific way. It's kind of heartwarming in a way.
Yeah, I certainly had never thought about it in her way. And I was like, well, you know, I like it. I like that version.
But I also love that, like, even if we have the intent of it being a certain ending, because it's always good to know as you make every decision that people can still bring it. So it's, because that's something I went back and forth with, because we're like, well, how does it end? And it was, at first it was open, but then Nairobi and I figured out being like, you know what, this is the definitive end. This will be what is next. So we can make that decision as we edit and go forward with each shot.
Right. Yeah, no, I get that. So my last question for you guys, you can both answer this as well, is now that you're here and like it's going to be screened in October, what is one thing you want like your audience to take away after watching it? And do you think it's successful in doing that?
Well, Barbara Walters,
Yes.
is I mean, for me, I don't think for me that I need them to take one thing or another, one's right or one's wrong. Ultimately, if they feel that there is love between these two people from the start to the end, then I think then the material has worked. If they don't feel any sort of love from either of them, then I believe then the project has failed. But up to this point, it seems to me that people are getting that. So I'm going to stay optimistic that in October that the audience feels that. And I think it's really important, as certainly in these new times and so much time of reflection in 116 days since, you know, while we're doing this interview, that not everything is black and white. Everything is really gray.
100%. And going off of that, through COVID time, as we each go inward on ourselves, it's almost what this couple had to do 3 years, but more they forced it on themselves in a way. Not force it, but they kept that time themselves rather than, okay, we have to stay inside so we don't all get sick in a very dystopian sort of way. So one, it makes us long for those chance encounter moments, but also now horrified that when we go out that we might run into our exes as well at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
But beyond that light moment, I agree with Nairobi. It's 100% that love and that connection and that how easy you can fall right back into it if you know someone that well.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
for those 3 years, and it really just clicked back in.
Yeah.
For sure. I definitely think it's successful because after I finished watching it, I was like, oh my God, I feel the love. It was so well done. So glad I got to watch it. And I'm so glad that I got picked to interview you guys for this film because it was so well done. And I love it. So thank you so much for your time today, guys. I
Thank
appreciate
you, and apologies for my step and repeat. My mirror. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I hope to see you guys in October. Hopefully we'll be allowed outside. Fingers crossed.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you.
See you guys soon.
Bye-bye.